letting go of the thing that I used to do every day, grabbing a new thing and saying, this is all I do. You answer the phone and then you pass them to somebody else who doesn't do as good a job as you would have. But you have to do that because you can't grow. You cannot take those phone calls and be the rescue and be the person that they call every time. You've got to graduate them, and you've got to let your people fail in order so that they can later succeed. And that's the most difficult thing I've had to do.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today, I continue my mission to interview 100 of the fastest growing and most interesting MSPs on the planet. Today, I'm blessed to be joined by Scott Breitman. Now, we all talk about culture, but let me ask you, have you ever kept the wrong person for too long? Worse yet, have you been wondering, should I fire them? Should I give them another chance? Scott tells this story where he struggled with the wrong people, struggled with, at one point, turning over 100% of his team, ending up in bankruptcy and figuring out, how do I do this better? He learned that if he can tie it to core values, he can take away the intuition and turn this into a more data-driven decision. But more importantly, always make sure he has the right people on the team. If you'd like to take away those hard-fought lessons, don't miss out on my conversation with Scott today. Scott, I'm excited to talk to you today. And you started off maybe not like the normal MSP, at least from my perspective. Some parts are what I would call maybe more typical, but tell me about what you were doing right before starting, it wasn't the MSP, before starting the technical business.
Yeah, so my first real career was an insurance agent. Spent the first 5 years of that knocking on doors as a door-to-door salesman. We had a protocol where we'd knock on the door, try to get in, talk to the people who lived in the household and get a sale the same day. That was our deal. When my wife then wanted to start a family, and she said, well, if you're on the road, we can't, there's mechanical issues here. We need to actually, if we're going to have a baby, we can't do it when you're traveling. So anyway, I moved home, started a health insurance agency, worked out of my home primarily. But it wasn't a very fulfilling job. I was really good at it, but it's kind of boring work. If you're into that kind of a thing, I'm still good at it, but and I'm still an agent 30 years later. But
oh, wow.
It's one of those businesses you really can't get away from, or if you do, it's not worth getting away from. Like I can explain later, but the long story short is that computers were a hobby of mine, and they didn't become a hobby until I was into gaming, and I got my first computer in 1995, and I didn't even know what to do with it. And I started hanging out with some friends who were playing games. I'd always been a gamer, but consoles like Atari and Sega and all of these old gaming consoles. But in the late 90s, computer gaming was like the hot rod of gaming. Yeah. And software was fast outpacing hardware at that time. So I had to build myself a new computer every 6 months or so just to keep up with the new games and the new software. And I learned to build a computer because I had these requirements. I needed to overclock my processor, and back then even getting peripherals to work inside a computer was a huge challenge. Today, you stick a device in there, the software goes, oh, I know what this is, and then it installs a driver. Maybe it's not the right one, but back then you'd have to mess with IRQ settings and changing slots if it didn't work. And I learned this from a friend. And before I knew it, I was I was building computers, selling them to my friends and family. And then I was repairing other people's computers. And I don't know if everybody's like this, but I'm obsessive with my hobbies, so they just go way overboard. And before I knew it, we were doing local area network parties. At first, I did them in my home. I'd have these parties at my house 3-4 times a year, and Memorial Day weekend was Memorial Day LAN, and I'd invite 20 of my friends over, and we'd kick my wife and kids out and spend the entire weekend just playing games head to head, because internet gaming then was spotty at best.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend that I was gaming with. He said, we ought we had to start a business, where we build gaming computers and do this, unique thing. And I said, I don't know, man, that's a lot. I don't really need to compete with Dell. And there's a couple of computer stores in town already. And he said, no, I think we could, really do a good job at this. And, we could offer repair guarantees. Like we could do this in 24 hours. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll be your support. You start the business. And I'll kind of run behind you. And, before we knew it, we were doing like $17,000 a month in sales out of my basement. And we had a repair bench down there, and we were fixing people's computers and building computers, and decided that we needed a retail store. So so that's how we started. And we opened 6 weeks after 9/11. So that's going to date me a little bit. That's getting further and further away. But if you were alive or conscious at that time, it was a difficult time to start a business.
Yeah.
People weren't spending money, and the only thing that saved us was this 24-hour repair guarantee, which we still do. So
so you went and started a retail, which is something everybody does, retail business, and then you were crazy enough to do this 24-hour guarantee. So what was that?
Well, we saw in the marketplace, and it's still this way, that if you take a computer somewhere, it's, and you decide to repair it. I mean, I realized that computer repair is not a big business, but back in the early 2000s, it absolutely was. I mean, laptops were $1,200, which today is the equivalent of around $2,000. Even desktops were expensive. So when they broke, you needed to get them fixed. And we had all kinds of, we used to be excited for thunderstorm days, because the surges would come through the telephone lines, and they would pop everybody's 56K modems that they were using for the internet. And so every time there was a storm, we'd get 40 computers the next day that needed, phone modems put in. Yeah. So it was worth repairing computers at that time. And because of this 24-hour guarantee thing, we just realized that there was no reason you really couldn't do one. As long as you had parts available, there's really no reason you couldn't turn a computer around for the next day. The funny thing was, when we were new in business, there was only a couple of us working. And so we would take computers in all day, be at the sales counter, and then as soon as we closed at whatever it was, 6 o'clock, then we'd go back to the repair bench, and then we would work all night fixing the computers so we could meet our 24-hour guarantee the next day. But reactive support was really the only thing in, for business at that time. And businesses around the early 2000s would maybe have one computer or two computers in the business. Maybe it was quoting. We had our first business customer was a bowling alley, and they had, pin racking and bowling alley, gaming system that was really rudimentary. But the point is that if it broke or it got a virus, the only place they could take it was a place you could turn it around in 24 hours. And so we ended up earning a lot of small business just by being available and getting those computers turned around. So it's the only thing that saved our business, actually. I mean, we thought we were going to get into business and build custom computers, and we did. But, I mean, we would have starved had that been the only thing that we were doing. So it turned out that the repair business was where it was at. And, ultimately that leads into managed IT service. But it was a long road between retail and reactive support before companies were willing to pay for managed business support.
I don't want to skip over all of it, right? But just to kind of tie this together, right? You went from insurance agent to land parties to the beginnings of kind of let's build. But I think this is great to every time I think I know something about business, then the market educates me a little differently, which is I think I'm building these custom PCs, and then it turns out it's the repair business that's really, bringing in the revenue. And then there's so much we're going to talk about in between them, but just to foreshadow, now you're a managed service provider, and let everybody know about how many employees and revenue you are now, just so we can kind of, now that we start in the beginning, we'll talk about that, and then I think fill in the middle.
Yeah, so today we're 36 employees, 3 in retail. Everybody else in some way supports the MSP. And retail actually supports our MSP, which we could probably get into later.
Yeah.
As to how specifically that those, it's part of the reason that retail is still here is because we haven't, we rely on it in the MSP. But I'll explain that later. So 36 employees, goals this year, 8 million in revenue. It appears we'll probably hit around 7.5, something like that. So that's where we are today.
Yeah. So, if you're not doing math on the fly, the earlier mention was in the basement was 17,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's 7 million a year is a long ways from 17,000 a month.
Yeah, five or 600,000 a month, something like that. Yeah.
Right. It's quite the difference.
Yes.
So you had this 24-hour guarantee. You were known as these guys. It sounds like a lot of people you figured out you should probably move towards managed services. How did that happen? Like, was there a aha moment, or did it suddenly decide to move?
There was an aha moment at some point, but but back then, and we were all doing the same thing, so I don't want to make it sound like I had things figured out differently than everybody else, but early on it was just retail repair, and this is early 2000s. And then following that was a greater and greater need for reactive remote support. In fact, I remember in 2003 or 4, remote support tools were just being developed, and we found these remote support tools and thought we were the geniuses that we were going to be able to use these things to support people. So I set up a desk right in the middle of our repair bench, and one guy would sit there all day long and take phone calls from businesses and then just log in and do reactive support to whatever it is that they had a problem with. As long as they had internet access, of course, we could probably help them. So that reactive support models, then we were all of us who were in this business were then selling blocks of time. So you would sell a 30-hour block of time. You try to guess at what they were going to use, and then you sell it and discount it. So if your rate was $150 an hour, 125 back then, something like that, it'd be $100 an hour if you bought a block, and so you buy $3,000 worth of IT service. The problem is that the better job we did at keeping your stuff running and not breaking, the worse it was, because we'd get paid less. The customer would get to the end of the year, they'd have 10 hours left, and they go, gee, this is great. Well, we didn't need 10 hours. We'll buy 20 next year instead of 30.
Yeah.
And so they would buy 20 hours now. And if you didn't do a good job, today I always say that great IT is when you never think about IT. But if you were doing a good job at reactive support, they call every day with the same fire and you fixed it, ultimately the client would be mad at you because things would break all the time, and they would see your efforts to repair it as not valid. And granted, we weren't doing anything to maintain it or to make it not break. We were just reacting to whatever fire it is that you said you needed. And that was the entire industry back then. There was no forethought as to, managing this stuff, and because it wasn't needed, it became a need. So IT has changed tremendously in 25 years. It's not like roofing. It's been basically the same for 50, IT's been completely different. So this was a transition. And I think many of the younger business owners who are listening to this may think, well, obviously, you should have been doing this or that or the other in the mid 2000s. Why weren't you doing these things? Because nobody was. That's the way we all did business. It was reactive support, block time. And then finally, I think the first person in this space was Gary Pica with a product he called True Methods. And Gary had built a 7,000 endpoint MSP himself, sold it, and then was trying to teach other people how to actually manage. And I think he did this in Philadelphia. But it was the first program that I listened to. And he said, hey, listen, you have got to get people on the idea that making things run and not break is where they need to be. And I just remember going through his program and just being angry at him. Like, you can't do this. Like, I know you're right, but how am I going to get? And at that time, this is by 2009, we were doing no joke, 1,000 tickets a week of repeating tickets. It was the same things over and over and over again for our clients, and we were losing clients. We were doing everything we could to react to them. I had my guys work until sometimes 7, 8 o'clock at night. I was just burying them in work, and everything was chaos and reactive. I mean, I was a great field general. If there was a terrible thing going on at work, I'd I'd pick up the pointer and I'd say, "You go here, you do this, you do that," and I'd call the customer, and I'll tell you, it was an awful time to be in business. But I knew that they were right, or that Gary was right, and it took a long time to turn it around, which we can talk about. But that was the birth of managed services. Was around 2007, 2008. I think ConnectWise was early in its development back then. I had Arnie Bellini was the former, I think he's a co-founder, I'm not sure. But Arnie Bellini was behind Gary Pekin, and they would do these podcasts and talk about managed services. And I would listen intently and just think, how am I going to do this? In fact, I remember finally being convinced that we needed to do it. And I bought our first program from True Methods to figure out how to do it. And I went to my staff and I say, hey, listen, this thing we're going to do, there's this whole concept in IT, and it's IT management. And it's important because clients, what they're really complaining about is they need their stuff to work all the time, and they're not happy when it's not working. So we have to make it so that they don't have any tickets. Like, we have to eliminate all these repeat tickets. And I remember my senior engineer at that time and my right-hand man, the best ticket closer I had, Chris, and my senior engineer was Kelly. They both looked at me like, you're crazy. Like, how are you going to close like all of these loops? Like, we don't even have time to go to the bathroom. We're just whacking moles all day long. That's all we're doing. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, we're going to do it this way. We got 1,000 tickets every single week to do. We're going to pick an issue next week that's repeating, and we're going to kill it. And then we're going to have 999. And then we're going to kill another one, and we're going to have 998. Yeah. And ultimately, I lost every employee I had. Between 2009 and 2014, there wasn't a single person that worked in my MSP that had worked previously for me in reactive support. So,
wow, I didn't see that coming. So, yeah. Why? To help me understand.
Well, they'd all been used to the way we were how should I put this nicely? We were a rough and tumble, gruff group of talented people. I had all of my technicians were really smart in IT, but not nice. I mean, they were, like, to get to the issue, they'd fix it correctly, on to the next one. So we just come in and just slug through our day as like coal miners, and those people were not ready to be in management of IT and focusing on prevention. They were used to just closing tickets, and they didn't want to have any part of a new management design or trying to figure out how to do things differently. And ultimately, they didn't believe in my vision. I mean, if at the end of the day, they all quit because they didn't think I could do it. Right. So, and I told them I could do it. And they thought, well, you're not the one closing the tickets, so what do you know? Right. And we're the ones down here doing this every day. You're not. You don't understand. And then I would say, yes, I do understand. I absolutely understand. And I'm trying to design a business or work up a model that actually functions for you guys and functions for the customers. I mean, we need to be at a 40-hour work week here. You guys need to have predictable schedules and days. And my customers need to have predictable IT. They need to show up every morning and just know that when they open the laptop or they move the mouse, that everything's going to be normal, that they can just do their thing and click away and type Word documents and print, and then they can go home at the end of the day. That's what they want. And that's the environment we have to deliver. So, and it started with just things like, I mean, we didn't have, I mean, today, all of these things are like basic stuff. Like, you have to have standardized deployments. Like, you take on a customer, they get all of your network gear. But back then, none of that was, I mean, customers didn't even think it was credible. You'd go talk to them about, hey, I think I need to change your firewall and your switch. I want to make sure I can get to it remotely, and that kind of thing. And they go, no, the one we have is fine. I mean, we're not going to do that. So here we are. I've got 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 junior technicians that are having to work on 24 different types of firewalls, and they're all down there in their cube farms. Somebody have a problem with a sonic wall, and the technician would take a turn around and go, "Anybody remember how to work on sonic walls?" I think the last time I worked on one was whatever. So it's a whole different. We all know what the model is today. Deploy the same stuff out there, and then train your techs on your own deployments and do backups and have configuration backups so you can deploy them whenever you have a failure. And everybody's trained on 1 or 2 or 3 different things that you deploy, and they know them. They know them inside and out. And that's what customers want, is quick response. They don't want to have their firewall down where you're scratching your head trying to figure out how to reconfigure it. I mean, they want you to have it ready or have a backup that you can take out. So that was a long-winded answer.
Yeah, no. So, Scott, how did you manage through that entire staff turnover, right? And how abrupt was that?
It was gradual over time. I mean, I lost 1 or 2 people almost right away. But then over the next 3 or 4 years, I lost all of the people that I had thought were I was going to carry this business through. I mean, early in business, I just had this fantasy that everybody who started with me was going to see the vision as I saw it and want to accomplish the things that I accomplished or that I wanted to accomplish, and that they would stand behind me and believe in where we were going, and that they were with me in the beginning, and I was going to take them to the end, and I was going to take them from being paid poorly to being paid really, really well. And we were going to have a beach volleyball court in our office and kick hacky sacks all day because we weren't busy anymore because we were so great.
Right.
And and none of those people survived, so to speak. I mean, I still know some of them, but I just had this idea that I was going to carry along everybody, like I was going to be out in the boat and point in the direction, and they were all going to be rowing behind me, and we were going to do great things. And we have done great things as an organization, but none of those people are here. But they were absolutely essential to getting us from where we were to where we are. I mean, as bad as we were at management at that time, we were great at reactive support. I mean, if somebody called, there was a technician on the phone. We didn't even have dispatchers at that time. It was just, phone would ring, technician answers. So,
Interesting. So, that's not your only struggle you've had with leadership teams or with people. Tell me more about some of those
Damien, I always tell people I have made every mistake possible in business. I mean, I have screwed up every single thing you could possibly screw up. I have been bankrupt in this business and back from the edge of the cliff. And, for most of the time that I've been in business, I had a job that didn't pay very well, and it was long hours, and I could argue that I was building a company with you, but I didn't even realize I didn't figure out how to make money until about 3 years ago. And I don't mean that I wasn't paid before that or that I didn't have a salary. I'm just talking about having a truly profitable company. I just didn't get it figured out. So I've made every mistake possible, and I highlight those because without them, I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. Everything that I learned was through trial and error or by making my own mistakes. And, I think the one, well, not the one, but at least one skill that I have is that I question everything. I don't accept any answer about anything, anywhere, anytime. And that doesn't mean that I'm argumentative. I'm just always thinking, should I believe this? Is this true? Is there a different way to think about it?
It's like there's a filter you have to process through.
You're correct. Yeah. And I think that questioning everything all the time has led us through some of the big challenges that a lot of business owners don't get through. Every time I look at how everybody else in the industry is doing something, I think, well, it's either brilliant and everybody else has figured it out, or it's not great. It's just the way everybody does it. And maybe I need to think about it differently. So the way we've conducted business historically has been slightly off kilter. from other MSPs. We don't do things the same way.
How so?
Well, we do things the same way. I think it's more contractually. We do things the same way with respect to fixing IT problems, but some of the approaches that we have are, well, they're different, but they were cutting edge when we did them. I don't know if they are today, but they have been cutting edge. Here's an example. We write 36-month agreements with a 30-day out clause. So I write the agreement, 30-day out. Instead, we build in early termination fees. We do all projects for free, or included. Wow. Okay, so I never charge a project expense to get a customer on board, and that is because they don't want to typically pay for all the things that I need to do to make them a solid client. So I don't give them a choice. You don't get to tell me what stack I'm putting in of tools. You don't get to tell me what domain policies I'm going to do or user rights or any of that stuff. You don't get any choice in that because I'm managing, and I'm going to do it in a all-you-can-eat format. So that puts all the risk on me. And I always say to the clients that I'm more in the risk management business than I am the IT business. So if I'm going to take all the risk for you, I'm going to do it my way. You don't get to choose how I do it. That doesn't mean that you don't have input, but at the end of the day, it's my decision because I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it my way. So the projects are included. We'll put 40 to 60 hours in every single client. We'll literally tear down the IT brick from brick, and we'll rebuild it to our best practices. And along the way, we'll eliminate all kinds of repeat tickets. An example is we don't do password resets at all. When we implemented no password reset policy, it got rid of 140 tickets a month that we were doing.
Wow. So we use instead?
We use QuickPass. It's a tool for clients to reset their own passwords. They can either have an app on their cell phone or they can visit the website. But one of the biggest problems with password resets is that it was taking a lot of our time, but it was also taking clients' time. The most frustrating thing for them on a Saturday morning was they forgot their password or it timed out. And then they're trying to get a hold of us in our 24-hour 365 window. And I don't care who you are in IT. None of us are good at this. If you call us at Saturday afternoon at noon, it's going to be like 3 o'clock before it gets through my filter of my overnight staff, getting it to somebody else, or, if we're lucky, it's 45 minutes. But even then, the clients are frustrated, right?
Yeah.
So we have to have them be able to reset their own passwords. But the other problem is that if a customer calls up and says, "Hi, I'm the president of ABC Company, and I want my password reset," how do we know who that is?
Yeah.
Unless you actually recognize their voice, or if you're small enough as an MSP to know everybody that you're servicing, sure, I guess that still works. But we don't know everybody that we're servicing. We have hundreds of clients and thousands of people inside these businesses. If one of them calls one of my tier 1 technicians and says, "Reset my password, I'm the president," and they do it, what if it's not them?
That's right.
Anyway, so we don't do it anymore.
Talk about risk.
But I'm great at sidetracking, by the way. And so that's just one of the things that we eliminated. Contractually, though, I'll get back to that. So we just do an early termination fees. So if you leave in year 1, you have to pay me back for my project. So if my project was $10,000, you're going to owe me $10,000 to leave me in the first year. But I'll let you go because I don't think there's any. There's no instance in where keeping a client unhappy with you benefits you or them. There is just no case where that works.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies get stuck in this 36-month, well, I've got a lot of investment in you. Well, you do have a lot of investment, but you know what? Be better. If a client should feel like they should never want to leave you, if they feel any differently than that, you're doing a poor job. And just having a contract that makes them stick in it isn't the right way to do business. The right way to do business is to make it so fantastic that they don't want to leave, that they would never think about leaving. Leaving IT is really hard. So you have to be pretty upset with it in order to go somewhere else, right? Yes. So your job as the MSP, I think, is to be unnoticed. The better you do your job, the less they're thinking about their daily issues. And then you got to be in once, twice a year and be consulting, be proactive. What are you guys struggling with? How could your technology work better? What can we do for you that, let me give you some ideas how other businesses are using technology in a way that helps them. Maybe it can help you. So we wrote those contracts early on. No project fees included. It's an all-you-can-eat format, and then just early termination fees. And year over year, we keep 95% of our clients. The ones that leave, typically, 75% of the clients who leave are through acquisition. They've been acquired by private equity, or they got acquired by a larger business, and we don't keep them. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that in business. That's probably the most frustrating thing to have done, is because, and I will say this to the younger or less experienced MSPs, what you're going to find, guys, is that the clients that are doing the best for you, that are your fastest growing, most profitable clients, they're often the ones that get acquired because they're the ones that are on the track and they make themselves look attractive for larger companies to come in and take them. So it's really frustrating because, the tiny little clients you have, like the 5 users and 8 users, I mean, they just stick around forever and they never move. Maybe you don't even work tickets for them if you're doing your job really well, but the big ones, the ones that are on a progressive track, and you're thinking, man, this client's, they went from 10 employees to 80 employees. Man, we're just killing it here with them. And then before you know it, they get acquired by somebody else, and you're not the IT provider anymore. So,
yeah, well said. I think that what you said makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, how far do you go down that standardization path? Do you replace their firewall and switches, all their hardware? Do you go as far as to replace servers? Like how far down that? Like, of course, you're going to put in your own backup and security, but software pieces. But how far down the hardware piece do you go initially?
The hardware piece, if it's completely out of spec, and I think we're really reasonable with our end spec requirements. Our end spec requirements is 6 years on a laptop or desktop and 7 years on a server. So and of course, hardware is becoming less and less of an issue. A lot of what we're doing is Microsoft public cloud. That's most of where we're going now with device management, Intune, that kind of things. But if the servers are there, all I ever tell the client is that you just have to be on the curve with me. So I'll take you as you are. I'm just going to change your expectations. If you're going to have a 10-year-old computer, for example, I'm just going to tell you that you shouldn't expect it to be reliable and that you should expect some downtime. There's no way that I'm going to be able to make this thing work correctly for you. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to make your employee who you're paying $40,000 a year worth that. They're going to be worth $20,000 a year to you because they're going to spend half their time tinkering on this device. Yeah. Far better to spend $700 or $800 or $900 and get yourself a new device because you're really costing yourself a lot in payroll. But you don't have to. You can stick with where you are. What I won't do is I can't operate on outdated software. I'm not going to work on unsupported software. If you have freeware in your business, we don't help you. I'll help you to the extent that I'll reboot your old server. If it comes back up not able to function on your with your old freeware or software that you no longer pay for, I'm just going to shrug my shoulders. But yes, otherwise they do get our networking stack and they get our tool stack, and they really don't have a choice on the tool stack because that's how we manage our risk. You can't decide that you're just going to do without AV or that you're going to have your own AV because you don't want to take our AV. No, you're taking our AV because ours, at least what we're using, we think is the best. And it's the lowest risk for us. And we know, since we have everybody on it, we know how well it's going to work. And lastly, and not the least, is that every tool that we have, we deploy to every single business. So if we have decided that a 2-person business needs it or a 300-person business needs it, they both need it. There's no good, better, best. I'm not going to come to you as a small client and go, well, you're just not as important as the big client, so we're going to give you mediocre security. You need just as much security, if not more, as a small enterprise than the large enterprise needs. And if everybody needs it, everybody gets it. And then when we go to the vendors, we say, look, we have this many thousands endpoint. We're going to buy them up front. we're going to buy all of them. I get prices on my tool sets that very few in the industry are getting, because I come to them with thousands of endpoints to start with. I don't say, well, we're going to start offering this, and next month I'll sell 10, and the month after that I'll sell 22. And so the pricing that we get is far better than the pricing that you're going to get just committing to, a few licenses. So,
yeah, huge difference
yeah.
there. So you talked about in the last 3 years, so many things changed. One of those, I believe, if I'm correct, is you doubled your company, your revenue. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's changed? What are the lessons learned?
Ultimately, what really changed in the last 3 years was the Entrepreneur's Operating System, or EOS, which we could talk about. I'm sure a lot of people listening are familiar with that, or the book Traction is where it started. So when we got into, the first thing that we did was defined our culture. And I always thought, when people say, tell me your core values, I thought, well, what is this like? Like, we love people, we're happy,
Right.
like that's what core values were. No, what core values actually are is you take the best people in your organization and think about the attributes of those people and what do they embody? What do those people embody? That's your core values. So, a couple of ours, like do the right thing, enter the danger. Some of these things are sort of obvious. Another one of ours is solve it. Like, we don't accept workarounds. We're going to figure out what the right fix is. I'm not going to reboot your print spooling service every Tuesday. I'm going to script it, or I'm going to tell you to replace your printer, or I'm going to figure out what's causing it. I'm not going to keep doing this chaos. It's like jiggling the handle on the toilet every day. I'm not going to do that. So it's really important that you define your core values. Well, the bad part of defining your core values is that everybody who doesn't meet it has to be fired. And that is, you have to live it. Like, and all of us, I think, if all of us have kept people that don't belong, but when you really start measuring, this is who we are, and this is what makes us great. And when you find people that aren't embodying those things, we have like 6 core values, and you have to let them go. And what I wasn't prepared for was that my executive management team didn't meet my core values. So,
wow.
Yeah. So although they helped define them, they were not part of helping, or I'm sorry, they were not embodying them. And I found some things that we uncovered some things that our bookkeeping has never been great. It's always been complicated, but it hasn't been right. And so we would always figure out a way to figure out or to find how much profit we had, so we're paying the right amount of taxes. But outside of that, like, there was just a lot of money going a lot of places, and we couldn't. As you get bigger and bigger, it's much easier for this to happen to you, where you just have a few bucks going out here and a few bucks going out there, and a few bucks not coming in or not being billed, which we can talk about in detail. I'm happy to talk about how we solved all those problems, but a lot of it wasn't being properly handled, and we got to a point where we're late. I mean, we're doing a lot of business and making no money, and it got to the point where we were going to miss a payroll possibly, and it was because we had $50,000 or so in unbilled product, and I had $150,000 in accounts receivables that were past due over 90 days. No one told me. So,
wow.
And that is, at that point in our business, and with the tenure that some of these people had that were with me, it was unforgivable. Like, we're not going to be able to go forward. And to be fair, the management staff that I had were great managers. They just weren't good leaders. So
What do you mean by that?
Well, managing is sort of task driven. You have a certain set of tasks and then you make sure that your people are meeting those tasks and that they're given the tools to meet those tasks. Leading is explaining what we're going to do. What's the vision? How are we going to do it better? And then if people want to follow you, it's creating an environment where people want to follow you, where you don't have to say, follow me. If you're running around saying, follow me, you're not a leader. Mm-hmm. You're a manager. If you're leading, people will follow because they believe in you. And we had to change the way that we were doing business in order to get to the next level, which had a lot to do with process, automation, and figuring out what's important in the business. Before that, our management team would have 85 issues a month that were all number one priority. And we would get none of them done. And the next month, it would be 86 issues that were all number one priority. And whatever had the biggest fire would get 2 or 3 hours of attention from somebody. And in some cases, 2 or 3 of us were working on the same issue at the same time and not even knowing that we were working on the same issue at the same time and going in different directions. Mm-hmm. So the number one thing that changed in the company was the attention to the details when the management changed, the vision, following the vision, and then focusing on what was the most important things for us to do in the next 90 days. And then whatever those were, those 3 to 5 things, that's what we would do. And then we would accomplish them. And the next quarter, it's 3 to 5 things. And that's all we would focus on as a team, and we would accomplish them. And that's what really shifted and changed. And we changed on a dime. We're a company with no debt. So at any point, if things go up or down, and I hope that they never go down, but if they go down, all I have to do is change personnel or remove personnel, and we're suddenly profitable again. A lot of us, and at one point in the company, I did have debt, so I'm not, disparaging anybody who has debt. I mean, it's part of business. Yeah. And we will. We're looking for an acquisition this year. We'll probably grab some debt to acquire a company. But the point is that if you remain very flexible by not having a lot of debt, it's very easy to get back to profitability if you lose customer or if the business takes a turn. So we were able to flex it within a matter of 6 months. We were a completely different company outside of that executive management change. Wow. And it wasn't just about new revenue as much as it was about profit. We were keeping a lot more money. And that's what my EOS implementer said. Revenue is something you talk about at cocktail parties, but the bottom line is what really matters. Like if you're doing $1 million of revenue and you're making $200,000 a year or 20% on it, you're far better than doing $5 million of revenue and making $200,000 a year, because you've got 5 times the work in that business for not any more profit. What matters is the profit, and that's what you need to focus on. How do we become really profitable, not how do we become really big? I mean, the two go hand in hand. Once you figure out profit, then getting big makes a lot of sense. But getting big just for the sake of getting big and not having subsequent profit is not useful. Right.
Yeah. So somebody said revenue is vanity and profit is sanity.
That's a good way to put it.
I'll forget that. It's a very big difference because, people are more open about it. Tell me your revenue. Tell me that. Where, and it's funny. I run into some folks. They're like, no, we don't want to share that. I'm like, okay, I can look on LinkedIn. And I've got a pretty good, if I know how many employees, which LinkedIn's usually going to tell you, I know pretty close what your revenue is. And it's not a state secret, but very different in business, your profit based on how you're operating. So I want to dig into this a little further, Scott. You implemented EOS, even the team that helped come up with the core values, some of the executive team, they weren't living up to them. So you had a tough change to make. And am I right? Was that your entire executive team?
Well, yeah, it was the entire executive team. And frankly, it was 80% of my total staff. So 80% of the people who worked here 3.5 years ago are not here. Wow. So, and it's you may be imagining it's because we came in there with a sledgehammer and an axe and just said, you're out and you're out and you're out. And that's not really what happened. We changed as a culture. This is who we are. This is how we're going to go forward. There's the direction I'm pointing in. And if you're on board, you're on board. And if you're not on board, then you need to leave. And so a lot of those people, of the 80%, I'd say maybe 15% were terminated. The rest left of their own accord. They just weren't the right people for the organization we were going to become. They were the right people for the organization we were. And just couldn't grow into an organization that's at the next level. And we all have levels in business. I mean, early on, I did everything. I cleaned the toilets. I fixed the computers. I vacuumed the floor. I sold every single thing that was on the sales floor. I mean, whatever the customers came through the door, I sold it. I fixed it. Ultimately, you pass through these stages in business, and probably the hardest one to get through is about that 10 employee level, because you're still early in your career as a business owner. You can affect change by just muscling through. Like if there's a problem that a customer has, you can say, I got it, get out of my way, I'm going to take care of it. And then you fix it. As you grow, you get to a spot where you can no longer affect change. There's only 24 hours in a day, and without good process and good people behind you, you're unable to fix it. And so we languished for nearly 5 years in a perpetual revenue cycle of about $2 million a year. That's all we could do. We would lose as many customers as we would put on every single year. There were many days where it was very frustrating for everyone. Like there'd be an outage or a client problem, and we would drop everything we were doing that day and help that client. And then the next day it'd be some other chaos with some other client, and we're just unable to get ahead of anything. And at the end of the day, it was really about defining process and setting up automations and just really running the business like it was its own entity and needed to be profitable, as opposed to being reactive. It's so hard as a business owner to get out of that, because you have to remove yourself from operations. You have to remove yourself from that responsibility. You have to let people fail. You have to hand those problems to somebody else and say, here, it's yours. Every time you get a problem, instead of just going, get out of my way, I'll solve it, you have to go down to that manager and say, look, they're calling. This is what they're upset about. This is what I'd suggest you do. Let me know later how you fixed it. And then if they didn't fix it right, it's more coaching. And removing yourself. I think the hardest thing as a business owner I've had to do is progress from one stage to another stage, letting go of the thing that I used to do every day and grabbing a new thing and saying, this is all I do. Because sometimes your customers are literally dangling by a noose because you're not the one anymore. They're trying to call you, and you answer the phone, and then you pass them to somebody else who doesn't do as good a job as you would have. But you have to do that because you can't grow. You cannot take those phone calls and be the rescue and be the person that they call. Every time. You've got to graduate them, and you've got to let your people fail in order so that they can later succeed. And that's the most difficult thing I've had to do.
So and I can very much relate, just spending so many years at 10 employees, 2 years, and it's like 2 million rather, and years and years, it's like this invisible wall you can't see, you keep running into, at least in my experience. Having been through that, like what would you do differently now?
I think I have to be honest. I didn't understand profit. I mean, I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand. I would say that I didn't even really understand for 10 years reading a P&L. I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know how to point out what was wrong in a profit and loss statement. I couldn't look at it and say labor's way too high. Whereas now I can look at it and go, why is labor 38%? It needs to be around 33. What are we doing? What's happened here? Why is it the way it is? And as a business owner, you need to be able to understand those things. I didn't understand profit. I thought that revenue was the key, so I just kept working on sales, which is what I'm really good at. One of the things I'm great at is consulting and selling. So I would say, okay, you know what? I just need to sell more. But I was losing as many clients as I was putting on the books every single year because we weren't doing a good job. And the clients were telling us we weren't doing a good job, you know? And we would listen, but not hear. Client would say, you're not doing a good job. And we go, well, yeah, but that's because you keep this crappy software around. If you had good software, then everything would be great. Well, yeah, it's because your people, like, we've got the one for office manager who's crabby all the time. If she wasn't so crabby, then we'd do a better job. And so culturally, we thought we were great. But the reality is that when customers are leaving you, you're not. And it's a hard pill to swallow. You got to look in the mirror. And but if I had one thing to change, it would be not holding on to people that are cancerous to your business. I think this is the largest mistake we all make as business owners, and that is you have somebody who's extremely valuable for a period of time for you. And we all know who this person is. We all have them. We've all had them. And early on, they may do things that are absolutely brilliant for your business. Like, you couldn't have done them yourself. They develop a software program. They develop a process that you use. They've done something for a client, and they're great. And then they become not so great. In fact, they become not so great to the extent that they're telling other people how ungreat the company is and how ungreat the leader is. And so they work at the water cooler more often than they work at their desk, and all this talk and negativity, and they're that person. And you know it deep down, you know it as the business owner. But every once in a while, they'll go do something brilliant again, and you go, "Oh, you're back. Oh, you're back. You're gonna be successful and great again. I can see it." And so you just keep carrying this person.
Sure.
And while they should have been let go 2 years ago, you've still got them employed because of all of the things that you remember they did. And in some cases, they may have done these things being underpaid or working long hours for you. And as a business owner, you may feel like you have a debt to them. Like, hey, man, I remember all the sacrifices you did, so I'm completely loyal to you. But they're not loyal anymore in reverse. They're not loyal to you. They've forgotten about those things, and those things didn't mean as much to them as they meant to you. And so immediately now, if they're not meeting core values, if they don't get their job wanted or have the capacity to do the job, then they leave. And they're often asked to leave. Like, you know it's not fitting here. We know you're not fitting here. Why don't you go look for something else? That is the probably hardest lesson. I have kept dozens of people far longer than I should have kept them. And this happens every time we let somebody go. And then in the wake of them leaving, you realize all of the things they were actually not doing that you thought that they were doing. Like, they weren't managing this. Oh, they were sandbagging. They never even touched this. The backup wasn't even running. Like, you just have all of this stuff that just falls out of their wake that they were previously covering up while they were working for you. It's never a good idea when you have that gut feeling that someone's not working out. There's always somebody to replace them. Always. There's nobody in your business that's invaluable. There's nobody in your business that can't be replaced. No one. And I know I didn't even believe this, so I want to be emphatic about it, because people would tell me that. I go, yeah, but you don't know Kelly. You don't know how good he is. You have no idea how great he is. I mean, he's so smart. You don't know. I mean, it doesn't apply to him, but it applies to other people. I get it. No, it applies to everybody. There's always somebody that's wanting to step in and go and take the flag and go, I got this. And they'll just run with it. So what's the term? Or long to hire, something like long to hire, early to fire, or something like that.
Like type of, faster. So
there you go.
Why are we so bad at that, do you think, Scott? Like, I mean, because I can totally relate to that. Like, and one thing I'll share is I've never fired somebody prematurely. Right? I've never said, man, I've reacted and I just fired somebody for the wrong reasons, or just, like I just didn't get emotional and just say you're fired, or, and my point is, when I reflect on it a little deeper, if I've never in all the years in business fired somebody too early, and I'm not saying this should ever happen, but if I've never ever done it, my guess is I'm far too far on the other side, right? Giving too many chances too long when they're too, when they're doing too little. And tying it back to what you said from a culture perspective, you raised the bar culturally and people had to meet it. And you knew some people weren't meeting it. Why do you struggle with that? Because I know I do.
I think that we struggle as business owners because of the inequity in the business. As you don't recognize your own sacrifice. It's something that you accept as part of the deal. So early on, I worked 17 hours a day in the business. I went 4 years without taking any pay at all. And I still had my insurance business. So don't think like I lived under a bridge. Okay. But I didn't take any pay, but I worked a lot in the business. I didn't take that sacrifice as something that somebody had to pay me back for. I just knew it was part of the deal. But the sacrifices that your employee makes, I feel responsible for making them make that sacrifice because I've asked them to work at midnight or overnight or rescue a client at 3 a.m.
Right.
And so this you feel a loyalty debt to the employee oftentimes because at one time they were really great in the company and you praised them and maybe you even broke bread or had beers together and talked about how great this work thing that you did together was. And I think that it's hard to let go of that as the business owner. You get an emotional attachment to the employee that they don't have to you. It's hard to separate that. I've made it a pretty big focus not really to be friends with anybody in my business. Not close friends. I mean, I can be acquaintances and we can hang out and have a couple of beers, but I'm not going to make it a friendship because at the end of the day, it's really not a friendship. You're writing them a paycheck, and you'll see that as soon as you're not writing them a paycheck anymore, how good the friendship is.
Yeah,
because it often completely disappears, and it's not because the employee did something wrong or bad. It's really because the glue that held you two together was the work experience. That was your common ground. You maybe didn't have anything else that was your common ground. It was work. And so when you get together, you kind of, bitch about work together and it's a lot of fun. But then when that disappears and that glue's broken, then there's nothing to have a friendship with. So I think that's why. But it's very helpful, in my opinion, to have a set criteria for working here, like core values and GWC, get it, want it, have the capacity. Because when you check those boxes, you just go, well, you're not meeting them. So there's no ambiguity. There's no, it's not a mystery. You're not meeting the core values. So then I can take my personal feelings and I can set them aside and go, okay, well, it doesn't really matter how I feel.
Yeah.
These things are not true.
So I wanted to ask you mentioned about being the guy that overdoes it, even in your hobbies.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
I think everything I've ever done that has been a hobby or an obsession. Well, I'm sorry, I should not call it obsession. I'm going to use that term lightly. But I go overboard with my personal interests, and historically I've always done that. And then I'm so overboard in them that I completely burn myself out. I was one of my passions, and like in high school, for example, I was really passionate about cars and working on cars. So I tore engines apart and I did everything on my own car, and I bought and sold cars, and I was just obsessed about every model of every car and every year. And I could tell you everything from a brand new car, model types, engines, I mean, the whole thing. And ultimately burned out so bad on that I don't even want to touch a car anymore. I just want to put gas in it and drive it. In fact, one of my early goals was when I had written down when I started in business. One of the things I'd written down is that I wanted a Corvette. When I got the money to afford one, I no longer wanted one. So it's like, like this whole thing, like I could have all of that and I have no desire to actually have it. So, anyway, so that was it. And then it was the computer gaming thing. So, the only reason I learned anything about computers is because I had to play the games. So I was obsessed with gaming. I was gaming on my computer, and this is in 1996 and 98. I mean, I was gaming 6 hours a day. So I had a wife and 2 kids, and then somehow or another I'd spend 6 hours a day. I'd go home, or I'd go to bed every morning at like 4:30 in the morning, get up at 8:30. I was just exhausted all the time, but I had to keep playing games. But I had to learn how to do all of the things. Back then it was modular sound cards and video cards, but everything was modular in the device. And
just put a sound blaster in the PC and away you go, right?
Yes, and basic networking was chaos. I mean, DHCP was a new thing in 2000, around that era. Prior to that, it would all be static IP addresses, and so you'd run around at like a LAN party just to get your stuff working, and have to set static IPs and subnet mask and all of that. And these are things that required me to learn this stuff. I had the desire to learn all of these technical things was really only an outcropping of my desire to play games. So anyway, I obsessed on it. I then didn't play games for nearly, 7, 8 years after I started the business, because I was just not just because I was exhausted, but just because it was IT, this, that, and the other all day long. And I didn't have any desire to learn anything or do anything more by the time I got home. So I turned my hobby into a business. And I'm still passionate about technology. We're always cutting edge. Whatever the latest thing is, we're gonna deploy it, and we're just gonna see what happens. But if it saves us time or money, we're Johnny on the spot. We're deploying whatever the newest technologies are and the newest things to do in business. I mean, we'll be the early adopters. So it sometimes can bite you in the butt. We usually test it on ourselves first and find out if it takes us down.
That's the way to do it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. So on a personal level, like, what has that meant for you? We talked before and you said something about being a kind of a why learner. How has that shaped the way you approach learning?
Yeah. I'm really bad at accepting knowledge that I don't see the point in obtaining. So if you're going to tell me, if you're going to ask me when a document was signed in history, for example, I don't care unless I understand why it matters. So I don't care about learning anything unless I understand why. Once I understand why, then I will develop a passion for figuring it out. It's not that I'm uneducated. I'm very educated. I just learn the things that I want to learn. And if you can't demonstrate to me why I should learn something, then I don't. But that doesn't mean that that's actually a virtue. I often refuse to learn things until I know why, but I haven't really asked why. I just, in my own mind, I'll think about why or why not. It's important, and then I will determine that I shouldn't learn it. So other people have to point it out to me, and I can be a little bit of a tough cookie to get through. I've thought through a lot of things in life multiple times. I think I have most things figured out, but I also accept that I am blindly ignorant sometimes to things that I don't have new information about, or I've never really thought through. So those close to me will force me to think through things in a different way, and ask me the right questions. But yeah, I won't learn anything if I don't know why. I need to learn it. I just refuse. So it makes me a terrible student. And one thing that I don't do is I don't do webinars. And the reason I don't do any webinars is because 80% of the information you're going to give me are things I don't want to know. I only want to know about the 20% of the things I want to know about.
Yeah.
So I will say, don't put me in a webinar. I will absolutely space out through the entire thing. I won't hear half of what you're saying because I don't care. I don't know why I need to know it. I don't want to know where the start button is. I want to know what your software does. I want to know how it helps my business. And so I'll usually ask for, if they ask me for a webinar, I say, no, I won't do that. But what I will do is I'll do 15 minutes with you where I get to ask all the questions.
Yeah.
And then if we determine at the end of the 15 minutes that we would like to move forward, I will hand you somebody in my organization that likes webinars, and then you can talk. You can walk them through the whole product if you want. And if they think it's still a good idea after that, they can come back to me and say, "Hey, yeah, I think you sent me over is I think is a good idea." So
I love that you share that. Right? Not everybody will be open to share that, Scott. And I feel the same way. When somebody in my team asked me to join this to give my input, and this, vendor just started off with like, here's the logos we have, and here's this. And I was like, no, I'm going to stop you right now. I don't care. Like, I want to know, how does this impact this and in this specific way? And, then they give generic answers like, well, it does these things. I'm like, well, I know it does those things. So like, let's get down to like, will this make an impact to my business? Will this help our team? And how? And the tough questions. And, what's funny is that's the way I love when people engage that way with me. If I have a client saying the same things, I love it, because I'm like, great, let's get right to it and see if we can help or not. But I find it funny that you're in that same boat, and that I almost find it funny that others aren't. Why sit there for an hour when you care about 5 to 15 minutes of it. Depending on what it is, and probably shows you why so many people register and don't attend.
Yeah, I think adding to that, one of my biggest weaknesses is patience. And so, rather than decide that I'm going to be a more patient person, I actually avoid things that make me impatient. So, and I avoid them for everybody else's benefit. I mean, it's also for mine, of course, but it's really for theirs, because I can be uncomfortable around you if I'm impatient with you. So I don't put myself in situations where I'm going to be impatient. So I don't take, one of my silly examples is I don't take sales calls except for a block of time, which I set aside. So my block of time is between 8 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. on Mondays. You can call me anytime in there, and I'm mentally prepared for that call. And no matter how stupid your offer is, I'm going to listen to you. That's my rule. That's my rule. Okay. So, and oftentimes, it maybe is something that I would like to hear about, but I am not mentally in a space on Thursday afternoon at 2:30 when you call for me to listen to you. So I have learned to be polite and say, listen, here, I appreciate you calling. If you're able to call back between, if you want to schedule with me even on Monday morning, I will take your call, but I won't take it now. And the ones who are computer dialing from call centers, they don't call back. But the ones that are actually scheduling their own meetings will call back. And then sometimes, I forced myself to listen, because I was a door-to-door salesman at one time, and I had a product that I liked, and I wanted people to listen. So, okay, you'll get my ear. But I only commit to 15 minutes. I still say, hey, listen, it's still going to be a deal. 15-minute meeting. We're not doing a webinar. You're going to let me ask questions. And then if they agree to that, then they'll get my ear. So.
Yeah, I love that. Right. You don't have to give them all your time, but I can also relate to, like, in the early days making cold calls. And so it's like, I don't want to just, I don't understand the people that want to just ream somebody out when you're like, didn't you ever have to do that?
Yes.
You have to be that guy. Can't you relate to that?
Yes.
Same thing in like any part of the other service industry, because we're in a service business as an MSP, right? And then you see people that like treat their waiter or waitress poorly, or you're like, it's the service industry, it's a different part of it, but it's service at the end of the day. What's the biggest lesson you've learned over all your years in business, Scott?
I think the biggest lesson, and it's really been in the last 2 or 3 years, and that is letting go of the operations piece, letting go of the thing that I lived for 20 plus years, being okay with other people doing it, directing my directors. Like, this is the vision for the company. This is how I see this going. Or if anybody wants to do something new, I force them to spill it to me. And then we talk about how this adds to the vision of the company or how it does not add to the vision. Separating myself from operations. I mean, my job is to have the mental space. And I think, not everybody has to do this. So I want to be fair. Like, I couldn't have separated myself from the operation when we were 10 employees.
Right.
But I think that a lot of business owners don't progress out of operations once they're at a point where they don't need to be in them. Yeah. And what I was doing is I was taking all of my mental capacity and devoting it to so-and-so's got a problem with X, Y, and Z. Let me step in and help you solve the problem. It is absolutely not where I need to be. My mental energy needs to be who's struggling in my community in the IT business that might accept my offer to buy them. What networking event can I attend that I'm going to meet other business owners? I need to play golf this month with somebody. Who is it going to be, and what should I do to, expand my group of people that know me? Because at the end of the day, all of the business that we're going to do meaningfully going forward is going to be on relationships that I have. Mm-hmm. That's where my energy needs to be spent, is on those relationships and making sure that I'm seeing those people, they're seeing me, and then when there's a need, they'll think of me. And what the comfort space for me is to always be the dirt shoveler. Just give me a shovel and I'll shovel right with you, thinking that I want you to know that I'm not better than you. I'll put my shovel in the dirt too. Just because you work for me doesn't mean I'm not willing to do what you're willing to do, but that's still the wrong space for me to be. Mm-hmm. And that's been hard because even today, some big emergency comes up and I have to check myself and say, you just need to stay out of it. Like, you can give a couple of sentences like, here's how we solved it in the past. Go take care of it.
All said. So for that 10-person company, what do they need to start doing, right? Because they can't fully walk away from operations yet. And I think that's where it's hard. Like, there's a point where you're like your size at 36 where you clearly should be out of it. And there's a point at 10 where you can't just walk away. So like, how do you start that journey?
I think the biggest issue at the 10-person level or in that kind of range is that there's no process. There's no defined way in which you do business. There's no defined way in which you handle clients, do tickets, triage. Everything just is who's ever screaming the loudest, and it's whoever happens to get the phone call. And there's double work going on everywhere in your organization. And there's people doing things one way because it's the only way they know how to do them. And there's other people that are doing them far better. And yet nobody has a defined way in which you operate and you do business. Mm-hmm. So it's process and it's automation. And the MSP business especially, it's automation. It's taking those mundane tasks and making them a no-touch issue. Early on, it was Windows updates and patching. And there's still probably organizations that are doing this hands-on. But the very first thing to automate is all of that stuff and make sure that your people really don't touch it. In our case, we have an engineer that deploys patches in a test environment on the first Tuesday of every month. And then we okay those patches and they go out by automated tools the rest of the month and we never touch it. This is an easy thing today, but it was a very hard thing even 5 years ago to get right. Yeah. People were still manually patching. Well, think about all of the things that you do in your business that are redundant and that are repetitive, like the password reset issue. We eliminated 140 tickets a month. We went to printer management, for example, automated printer management or print servers, and we eliminated 160 tickets a month of just printer problems because of software driver issues, installations. I mean, so think about those things. Those things have to be automated. And the worst of it is that you've got to take somebody who's currently in production, helping clients fix this, that, or the other, and you've got to separate them for a certain amount of time of the month or week and force them to do these automations so that you can get better and be a 20-person company, not a 10-person company. And that is the hardest thing to do in business because you've got clients who really have emergencies and your best person is likely the one who's shoveling the most dirt. And you've got to take them out for half their time and get them doing automations and then your executive team, or even if that's just you, you've got to start working on your own process. This is how we do this. When a customer calls with X problem, this is the process that we take. We only work 30 minutes on it in tier 1, and then it has to be escalated to tier 2. Those processes, while they sound like they're intuitive or like, of course, that's what you do. You'll find that if you dig in a little bit, that your people aren't really handling everything the same way.
Yeah.
And that process is very important because your clients are never going to be happy unless they know what to expect when they call. Otherwise, they'll call up and they'll say, I only want to talk to Bob. Just give me Bob. Because you don't have a process, they're not going to talk to your junior people. They only want to talk to the senior people, and then the senior people get overwhelmed. That's my advice. That at that level, those are the two things that really need focus. So
that's really good advice. Appreciate that. What's the one thing you would do over if you could?
I think that, well, I would say, I guess I can say this, but I don't really think I had a choice. I wouldn't have had as many partners. When I started the business early on, my big joke is that I didn't have any money. In fact, I never invested $1 in my own business. I borrowed money, but mostly I borrowed humans. And when I say I borrowed humans, it means that either people worked for low wages or for free on my vision. I was really good at selling that we were going to do something very special. And while it may sound and feel like I was just there to take advantage of people, that really wasn't it. I didn't have any money to pay people. So it wasn't like I was taking money. I was just not paying people well. So, but there was a trade-off. I got all of the malcontents and the people who didn't exactly fit in society. They would come to work for me. My joke is that you pretend to work and I pretend to pay you.
That's a little too true. That hits a little too close to home in some cases. Yeah.
So yeah, I wish that I had, and I ended up taking on at different stages in the business. At one point I had like 6 partners, and that was in the mid 2000s. And those people whittled away, either they were terminated, out of the buy sell, or I bought them out. That was a big struggle because I would just say that if you're smaller in business, I would not encourage you to take what seems like a easy step to get into business with somebody else, because it's a partnership. It's like a marriage, and they're often not going to see things the way that you do. Fortunately for me, my partner, currently I've got one partner, and he's really taken mostly a back seat. So, stays out of my way, if you will. But he and I have a good working relationship. He just really doesn't want to be in operations. He's in finance a little bit with us, but he's okay not being involved in as much. But at one point, I had all sorts of people to sell the vision to that were also my partners, and then try to get it to the employees. So I wish that would have been a little different, but I just don't know how it would have been. So it's one of those things like, I wish it wasn't this way, but I really didn't have a lot of options. I didn't have places to borrow money, and even if I had, I don't know that I would have done the right thing with it. At one time, having a lot of product on the shelf was very important to me, so that we looked like we were successful. Like, that today doesn't make any sense to me, but it made a whole lot of sense to me in my mid 30s. Like, so, I just wouldn't have. I don't know if I would have done the right things. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Given where you are in business and the industry and everything, what's something you're looking forward to?
I'm really looking forward to scaling the business. I'm surprisingly, I guess for some, in business more to build a legacy, to do something meaningful, be the best at it, to leave something for others to build on, than I am for the money that comes along with it. The money now is a product of the other focuses. It's not, I don't focus on money. The money shows up as a result of doing the right things. In fact, what I'll often say to people is that when I started in business, my goal was to get wealthy. And my goal, looking backwards, was really more about proving my worth to other people than it was to satisfy my own desire for wealth. So today, I say that my desire is a freedom from money, not to get a pile of it. I mean, I'd rather slide into home dead and have $1 left in my account, but that's the only dollar I needed to slide in, than to die with a big pile of money that I have to figure out how to distribute to others. I mean, if there's money left over, that's fine. I'm just saying that that's not a goal. A goal is to be free from money, which is being able to do what I want to do within reason and go where I want to go without money being an object to that. And along the way, my materialism has gone way down. Earlier in my career, like the Corvette, these were all things to prove to me that I was great and to prove to others that I was adequate, and that I was more than they thought I could be. And none of that stuff means anything. The more of those things you collect, the more you realize how meaningless they all are and how there's no satisfaction. You're happy for like a week or 2 weeks, and like you get a new vehicle and you're admiring it, every time you walk away from it, and then a month later it's just a car. So yeah,
absolutely. What's your biggest challenge currently, Scott?
Well, again, I think it's really being the visionary. I mean, there are days where I don't have anything to do. I don't have an operations need, but I don't want to be irrelevant. Okay. The last thing I want to be is a business owner who has no idea what's going on. Like they walk through the office and everybody sits up straight and makes sure that they're typing on their computer, and you check in and you go, how's everything going? Great, boss. Everything's great. I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I know that I don't belong in operations anymore. Mostly, half of it is because I don't have the patience for it. I've done it so much, and I've burned out on it that like it's even being on the retail floor. And the retail business is a whole nother matter, but I don't know what anything costs over there. I have no idea. So I have friends of mine, they'll say, hey, if I brought my computer and I get it backed up, how much is it? And I say, I don't have any idea. I don't know. I guess I'd have to go to the website and look. And I couldn't be over there helping a client for more than 5 minutes. I don't even know how to run the point of sale system that they use over there. All I'm looking at today is P&Ls and vision, and this is how I want to operate, and this is who we serve, and this is what we don't do. And but otherwise, yeah, I think that's my biggest struggle.
That sounds like a pretty high quality problem.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What's the book or resource that you would recommend the most to others?
I'm going to say, yeah, I think that Traction by Gino Wickman is probably the most significant business book in my life that I've read. And that's what got us started on EOS, or the Entrepreneur's Operating System. If you haven't read the book, it's a really short read. It's about 2 hours, maybe 3. But it's if you can, it's how to run a business, how to run it successfully. And it's since our focus on that the company's been profitable. I won't say that it's the only reason, but it's a significant reason. But it's also difficult to run EOS. You may think that you can do it yourself. It's hard. You need an implementer, somebody to help you run it. But otherwise, the most significant book prior to that in business was a book called The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt, and it was it's a book about a manager who was hired to change. You may be familiar with this book, because he was hired to change the way that a factory operated because it was losing money. And the factory was always busy, and there was always people making parts and doing things, but they just weren't getting semi-trucks filled with product. So that was the initial thing he figured out. And his job was to find out in this business where the bottlenecks were. Why was it that they were always busy, but they couldn't produce anything? And that is, I've applied that concept dozens of times in my business life. Like, why are we not able to close 64 tickets a day? Why are we not getting the throughput or why do I not have as many tickets, but I have unhappy clients? What's the bottleneck? What is their experience? It was probably one of the most valuable books I've ever read for me, because often it's like my analogy that this is like a real-time strategy game. Do I need more farmers? Do I need to build a fence? It's like in the business, what's needed. Do I need a better manager? Do I need a software tool that's going to help my people do their job? Do I need a vehicle? How do I manage? Whatever it is. The bottlenecks are important. We all run businesses with blatant bottlenecks, but when you haven't examined the process, like if there's 9 steps to get from A to Z, how does each step happen in the process? What is the customer's experience in this process? And you'll often find that there's something glaring in the middle of it that you think was running just fine, and then you walk through each step and you figure out step 3 is ridiculous, and that's where your problem is.
Yes. I love that. It's not a well-known book like EOS, but and Goldratt's probably better known for the theory of constraints. And I've had the blessing of interviewing his understudy, Dr. Alan Bernard, because Goldratt's no longer with us. But it's if you understand what the bottleneck is, the constraints, right? That can give you so much power to understand, like, what do I need to actually focus on, especially when there's so many things in business we could do, we could improve. Right. Everything, it's like a lot of folks that try to consult and come in and say, you could do better here, you could do better there. And you're like, yes, you could. It's just not, using US language, it's just not the rock for this quarter. And it's not what we should focus on. It's not the most important. So I love that. Not as many people are familiar with the goal. That's a really cool recommendation, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have gotten so much out of this. For others that have, if they would like to connect with you or reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think probably the best way to start the conversation is by email. So if it's okay, I'll give my email address. It's scottb@dymin.com. So DYMIN. You can reach me there. That's passive form of communication. I do read all my email, and so I'll get back to you. And but I'm happy to talk about all the things I'm bad at with anybody.
I love that. Make sure to take Scott up on that offer. And Scott, you mentioned acquisition. So do you want to share more of, like, if I'm an MSP that's listening and I'm fitting a certain criteria, who should reach out to you to have a discussion?
Yeah. So I think we'd like to. It's tough for a business like mine to acquire an MSP because the noise in the marketplace is so heavy with private equity offers. And so, if you're an MSP my size, I'm not even going to be able to talk to you, or even half my size, honestly. But if you're, I think that for the business owners who are looking for possibly a path out of this, maybe you're not wanting to take the next step, or maybe it's so many steps that you just as soon jump over a few of those, and we can form a good partnership together. I am interested in talking, because part of our growth path, I know where I want to be, or where Dymin needs to be in the next 9 years, is around $15 million a year in revenue. And again, not just pointing at revenue, but if our business works correctly, the profit should also follow, right? But we're not going to do that through sheer organic sales. We're going to do it through acquisition, and we're going to do it in conjunction and with the team. And so I think that my vision is, I don't know, unique enough that if it's really interesting to you as a business owner, maybe we should talk. It doesn't mean that anything will come of it, but we have figured out a lot of things that may take several years for you to do. And if you're looking at speeding up the process, maybe being being part of our organization and us being part of yours is fit.
I love that. Whether it's acquisition or just picking his brain, make sure to take Scott up on that amazing opportunity. And Scott, I have learned so much. Thank you so much for being on MSP Mindset today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It was fun.